Hi, this is Dave Mathis. Last week, when we were talking with Dick Elliott, he mentioned something about how his bands were so successful, and he gave immediate credit to the junior high or middle school band directors underneath him, which gave his program such a great standard of excellence that it was easy for him to be successful at the high school. So I got to thinking, who would be a great representative of a middle school band director? And the first name that came to mind was someone that I worked with, and that is Dan Ogren. So, Dan Ogren, thank you for being here and getting a chance to talk with you today.
Great. Glad to be here.
So we're going to do things just a little different. Before I forget, for those of you that are watching, thank you for being there out in YouTube land. But if you have a question or a comment you'd like to put in the comments section, please do so, and we'll bring it up and we can ask Dan whatever you're asking. And Dan, you may want to move your screen down a little bit. We can see barely see you. That's better. That's it. So we're going to do things a little different. And I'm going to ask you some questions, not about where you started from or where you were born, but first of all, how long were you a band director for?
Well, let's see. I was first an assistant band director way back in college for a private band like MYS down in California. And then I started a band with a summer Parks and Rec program for 2 years while I was in college. And I did beginning and sixth grade band during the summer. And then I spent 32 years up here in Oregon, full-time teacher. And then after that, I don't know, 7 or 8 doing part-time teaching beginning band for a while, you remember, and then at PSU a little bit, and then at MYS. So all in all, a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
Well, it's really cool that not only were you a good band director, but you've got some other talents that people don't know about. And you're published. You've published a novel or 2. Tell me about those.
It's self-published through Amazon, but I'm up to about 40 sales. So it's a book about the trappers in the 1800s in the northern part of the country. It's called Missouri Wilderness, 1829, and it's just a novel that I wrote some years ago. And I've never bothered to try to get it actually published. I don't care enough. So I stuck it on Amazon.
And how many have you sold?
About 40 so far.
And how many of those were relatives?
I'd say about maybe 3.
Perfect.
Yeah, I got onto Mountain Man and Black Powder Enthusiast Facebook websites, and a journal called Tomahawk and Long Rifle or something like that. They're going to do a book review for me, and they put an ad in, and they've been running this ad. Interestingly enough, they started, it was going to cost me money, but then the head of the organization doesn't want any money. He said he just wants to run it because he likes the book and people should see it. So I think that's how come all the rest of them have been sold to reenactors that are into Mountain Man stuff, I guess.
Well, not only have you published some novels, but you're also published in a magazine about something you built. Tell us about this amazing contraption you built.
Yeah, sure. I'm internationally published as a photographer and an author because I built. We have 30 plus acres of forest out at the coastland that we bought, and I built an outhouse. And I was looking at pictures of outhouses online, and I found the Outhouse Historical Society out of Canada. And so I sent them a picture of my outhouse, and right away they said, okay, well, they're going to publish that and write a little blurb about it. So they published this picture of my outhouse and this little blurb. And I told all my friends, well, goodbye, suckers. I'm going to be on the Concorde flying jet setting around with my international outhouse friends, And then they sent me a copy of it, and it was done. I am not kidding you. And this is only, I don't know, 10 years ago, but it was done with blue mimeograph paper. It looked like it came out of the basement of a church in Manitoba or something. So I decided, well, it might not be the Concorde, it might be the back of a Ford pickup or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I am published in the Historical Outhouse Society.
Every person that I've interviewed so far has been born in Oregon, and you're our first person that has not been raised or bred here in Oregon. So tell us about where you were born, where you grew up at.
Okay, well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere on a 1,000-acre farm in North Dakota. And somehow I was lucky enough to have one of the world's finest piano teachers when I was young. I had an uncle that played euphonium and conducted the city band, and he let me play his brass instruments, and so I wanted to do that. And my beginning band teacher was horrible, to say the least. Then at age 13, we moved to Los Angeles, and I qualify as one of the most lost eighth grade boys that you could ever imagine. But my band director there was incredibly good, and he was also a park ranger in Yellowstone in the summer. So in the 8th grade, I said, that's it. I'm going to be him. I'm going to be a band director. I'm going to move to the Northwest, get out of Los Angeles, and I'm going to be a park ranger in the summer. So I didn't ever accomplish the park ranger part, but I was lucky enough that a professor at Cal State Northridge stopped me in the hallway and said, didn't I hear you were interested in the Northwest? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, there's a job opening at Philomath High School. And I had no idea what that was, but anyway, that ended up being my first job up here in Oregon. So that's how I got here.
Well, you weren't really a park ranger, but now you have 30 plus acres. I guess that would constitute kind of being a park ranger.
Kind of. I do spend one of my main hobbies right now is planting seedlings and working in the woods, both there, and then we live on 11 acres that was clear cut before we bought it. So I spend a lot of time on the hillside behind my house working in the trees. So yeah.
Well, before we talk about your first job at Philomath, I've talked to you a little bit about your student teaching, which was unique, so, to say the least. So tell us a little bit about your student teaching experience.
Okay, well, in California, you needed to student teach for an entire year. It was your 5th year. And part that I student taught with junior high school was just a great experience. I had a great teacher that I sort of selected myself in Simi Valley, and did that. And then my high school experience was very different. It was at Reseda High School, and the band director there was an old-time guy connected in the studios. And he had this unbelievable jazz band program there. And then he had a great band program and other things, but he interviewed student teachers. And there was 11 of us he interviewed, and he picked me to be a student teacher. He gave me the string orchestra, which actually had some winds in it too. And there was about 20 kids in there. And then he never showed up. That was it. And I asked him one time, are you supposed to come in and stuff? And he said, if I needed to show up, if I thought I needed to show up, I wouldn't have picked you. So I was impressed that I managed to take that group to festival, and we got straight 1+. But that's not so much when you know that at least half of them had parents in the LA Philharmonic. Well, there's a lot of, anyway, so his jazz band there had, oh God, what's his name? Ted, can't think of his name. I lost his last name. Anyway, he was a sax player who when he was in high school went with all the top jazz guys you can imagine. He went with Lionel Hampton to Hawaii for a couple weeks. He played with Louis Bellson and all of that, and Ted Nash. And he ended up playing with Wynton Marsalis. Well, he was the lead saxophone player. The lead trumpet player had come from Delaware. The piano player was doing the Merv Griffin show the year out of high school. And these guys had come from all over the country to be in this high school band. And we would, Tuesday nights we'd have an extra rehearsal, and guys like Bud Brisbois and Cat Anderson and these other jazz guys would come in. And so I was just like along for the ride, and I couldn't keep up with any of it. But I also learned that that was absolutely not the way I thought a school program should be run. I mean, he faked addresses for these kids and everything, and we went to the jazz festival up south of San Francisco, the Monterey Jazz Festival, and just won everything. It's the other poor high schools didn't have a chance. Anyway, so it was a very different kind of experience being in that high school. And then I went from there to Philomath, where I had 18 kids and one trombone player who was a senior, and he played what I always called the 6 positions trombone, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2.5, 1. That was all he could do. So it was quite a culture shock to come to Philomath.
Well, I was thinking that when you're talking about this huge jazz program from down in LA, and then talk about a culture shock going, not only the type of music, but just Philomath, this was before it was really a bedroom community in Corvallis. This was really a logging town.
Yeah, I thought that it was going to be a bedroom community. And then I've described it for years. It was 5 miles and 2 centuries outside of Corvallis. It was all Blodgett logging kids. I mean, really, mostly logging kids. And they didn't come from the Corvallis area. They came from the hills, So it was really quite different teaching there.
So for that first year, were you just at the high school, or did you do?
Yeah, no, I was just at the high school, and I knew, I knew that I wanted to teach middle school, but this was the job that I could get in the Northwest, and so I was there, and I did have some successes there. I thought, well, I'm probably going to be a pretty good band director, because I took 18 kids and we went out onto the field to march that first year because I didn't know any better, And so, I remember the second show that we did, we came out and we would play the Star Spangled Banner at halftime because it was about the only thing we could play. And then we'd play the first part of the Yellow Book #1. That was the school fight song, but we couldn't play the second part, but we could play the first part, right? And then I had 2 girls that, for whatever reason, had been the year before the state champion baton twirlers in some private baton twirling thing. And I had a kid who'd been playing drums in his dad's country and western band since he was 9 years old. And so after we played our 2 numbers, we turned out the lights and did an extended drum solo with flaming batons. And when the lights came back on, we marched off, and the crowd went wild. It's just like that was the greatest show they'd ever seen.
Well, that's perfect. And this was posted on Louis Northfleet's page, and he had a quote from David Maslanka, and David told him to embrace the community. And that sounds exactly what you did. And that, we laugh about it, but that's exactly what the community wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Although when I quit I was there for 2 years, but I resigned in the middle of the second year and told them I'll be gone at the end of the year. And there was a lot of things that were bad about that for me. But the finisher was when I told him I wasn't going to march anymore with our little 20-piece band. It was ridiculous. And the principal told me, Dan, the audience just wants to see the uniforms. And then I thought to myself, I know I don't belong here, So actually at the end of my second year, I was going to quit teaching. I had it at Philomath High School, and I got a job salmon fishing in Alaska. And 2 weeks before that boat was going to go, the guy that I was replacing said, no, he was going to go after all. So I got kicked off. So I had no idea what I was going to do. But Jim Angren, the choir director there, who was a good friend of mine, he was just adamant that I had to keep attempting to teach. And so I auditioned or tried out for the job at North Albany, the junior high school, and I didn't get it. And so I'd gone down to LA to work in a machine shop, where I'd worked in college part-time, and my family was down there. And I was just going to go there for the summer. And the first day of school, the phone rang, and the guy they'd hired at North Albany took a job in Montana and didn't tell them. And all of a sudden they needed a band director. So I rushed back up, and I started my second job at North Albany, literally, like one day before the kids came. And at the end of 2 weeks, I knew that teaching was everything I thought it could be, because it was everything it should be at North Albany Junior High School. It was an incredible place, and I was incredibly happy there. So, kept on going. But if that guy hadn't come back and taken his job on the fishing boat, I'm not sure I'd be talking to you now.
That's amazing. And I'm going back to what you said. You said you always knew, or you wanted to be a middle school or junior high band director.
Yeah.
How did you come about that fact?
Well, I love teaching beginners. That was my favorite part. And there was a moment there too where, I wanted to because of my band director, and because of the way he lived. And then I wanted to because when I was doing the summer band program through Parks and Recreation, I was teaching beginners, and I had never taught anybody how to play. It was just using my college education and stuff. And I'm down on my knees in front of this little 5th grade girl, and I'm rolling the flute head joint in and out, trying to get a sound out. And she hasn't been able to get a sound out for the first 2 lessons, and she's almost in tears. And all of a sudden, this sound comes out, and I look up, and her eyes are as big as dinner plates. I'm like, yes, I did it, And I thought, I need more of that. That's what I want to do. I want that moment where the kid gets that success, And then as time went on, I wanted to do it because all the high school guys like you, if your whole family doesn't buy into the fact that that's your life, you're in trouble. And I remember it was Lambert Morris telling me one time, I was teasing him because he had twin daughters and they both played, and I was teasing him that he had to have a family to have his band, right? If he needed more people in his band, he just had another kid, right? And he told me, well, without that, he'd never see his kids. And I went, that's it, And so I was convinced that I was just going to do middle school, so I didn't have to do all the games and all the incredible amount of stuff that you high school guys have to do.
And Lambert Morris was a long-time band director at Beaverton High School.
Beaverton High School, yeah. At that point, I was in Beaverton. I was in Beaverton for, I don't know how many years, maybe 11 years or something.
Well, how long were you in Albany?
3 years. And what happened there was, it had been junior high, and it was an incredible band program. Things were going really well. In every way. They were supportive of me, and I had good kids, and but then they decided they were going to go to a middle school, and they were going to copy Junction City. Well, when Junction City went to a middle school, they almost lost their entire band program. By the time they were done, they didn't have much of anything. So I went down to Junction City and to observe and see what was going on, and things were much better. But they were better because they'd almost completely given up their original middle school concept, and they were almost back to being a junior high school again. But we were going to go where they were. And so I decided I just didn't want to live through that. And, in retrospect, if I'd stayed there, it came back to being a wonderful school in not too many years. Frank Kenny was there for a while, and everything got better. But, I decided to run for it. And so I got a job in Beaverton, which in the time, we called it the land of milk and honey, working in Beaverton because it was such a nice place to work. And I was at Meadow Park feeding into Del Herod, and he had a great band. And then I had Marv Clark feeding people into me, and he was an unbelievable elementary band director. And so, I just felt like, I've made it. So,
well, one of the things that I always liked about you is your sense of humor, and you're getting through different situations with a good sense of humor or a good joke.
Mm-hmm.
And the part at Beaverton for a long time was really good, but you still had struggles with administration and scheduling and all that, like people still do. So what were some of the things that you did or that you had exception to in your middle school situation in Beaverton?
Well, first when I was first in Beaverton, it was junior high schools, and the year that they went to middle schools was kind of unfortunate because I had just had probably the best band, well, no doubt the best band of my whole career. My ninth grade band was just phenomenal. And the year following them, the eighth graders were phenomenal. And the year following them, the seventh graders were really weak year. So all of them left. And the seventh graders moved up to the eighth and became my top band. So it was such a drop, a precipitous drop, you know. And then at the same time, they started scheduling me some very strange things. And I was doing choir and orchestra, and I didn't mind that. I enjoyed teaching choir and I enjoyed teaching the orchestra. And then they put my band on the stage. And if anybody knows the kind of stages they have at middle school, you know, I had a 70-piece band on the stage. And I told the administrators, I can promise you I'll try to keep them safe. You can't expect education, you know. And things just kind of went along like that for a while. And then I had 40 kids signed up for my eighth grade choir, and they decided it didn't fit into their house schedule. And so we would just have choir at lunch as an activity. And I told the principal at that point, I said, look, you know, it's cruel to keep chopping legs off the horse. Why don't you just shoot it? You know, if you want a music program, let's just admit it and be done with it. You know,
Right.
I'm leaving. And so, you know, I started looking for work at that point. You know, I'd had a lot of good years there, but I just, I didn't want to do that anymore. So, you know, I left. But, you know, every place you go, you know, there's going to be some kinds of problems, you know. One thing, another. I ended up in Lake Oswego. That was 9 years of really wonderful stuff and very few problems, you know. And actually, most of my career, almost all of my administrators have been good. I've enjoyed the people I worked with. I've enjoyed the students and the parents. I mean, the vast, vast majority of the time. So.
Well, one of the ways I got to know you better is that we would play basketball. We had a little basketball league that a bunch of teachers played in. And you had a great shot. I remember that, or a hook shot or something. But another person who played basketball at the time was Mike Walmart, who was the past music person of the OSAA.
Yeah. Well, Mike and I met Mike because I conducted the Beaverton Community Band for a few years, and Mike played the tuba in there. And then we started playing in a quintet together because, you know, people ask me, how can you stand as a musician being a middle school band director, you know? And I would just tell them, well, it isn't about music. It's about children. If I wasn't doing that, I'd probably be teaching social studies. But I do need music. So I started an adult quintet, you know, so that I could have that. And Mike and I and Scott Woods, who's in there, and now my son plays in it now. You know, we've been playing together well over 30 years now. And so, and Mike and I played basketball together several different places, not just at school, but in a couple of places at night, you know, just Parks and Rec kind of stuff. So
now after Beaverton, then you went to Rosemont Ridge?
I was at Rosemont Ridge for 1 year.
1 year, okay.
1 year. On that year that I was there, you know, I've told an awful lot of people that if I had left Philomath when I was going to quit teaching because I couldn't stand the things that were going on, not the kids were always fine, but the administrative things and the other things that were going on. If I had gone to Rosemont Ridge as my second job, I would have quit, and nobody would have talked me into another job, because that year, it was the opening year of Rosemont Ridge, and the principal, it was his last year of being a principal, and he simply did not do anything. He just wore a hard hat and talked to the construction people. And, you know, I remember the first day and school was done, I went out to the parking lot and there was no everybody out there doing duty, and there was no plan for the buses, and the kids were running rampant through the cars, and buses were going everywhere, and I thought somebody was going to be killed. So I was out there trying to take care of something, and I just thought, this is, shouldn't this be the administration's job, And anyway, there was a lot of bad things in the scheduling there. Basically, I think that their main idea of scheduling was we have X amount of kids and X amount of boxes, so the boxes are filled, we're done. And so it wasn't good, And I knew well before the end of the year I wouldn't be staying there anymore. And I remember telling the administration, well, first off, I put out on Facebook and everywhere else, help, I need a job, And Debbie Glaze, bless her soul forever, said, we'll come to Lake Oswego, So I went into the principal and the vice principal and I said, well, I'm leaving. I'm resigning. I'm taking a job. And they were like shocked, like they didn't expect it, And I told them, well, I have to, because I can no longer drink for pleasure. This job has made it a requirement. So I'm leaving. And so I went to Lake Oswego and spent 9 incredible, wonderful years there working, feeding into Rick Tippett's and then into you. It was just a great place to be.
One of the things that was amazing with your band programs is the joy that the kids would have most of the time in your classroom. And it actually started in beginning band because I looked at your method book and I found out that you wrote your own method book for beginning band. I
did. Yeah, that's because I didn't have any money to buy anything with for a while in Beaverton. It was just, I couldn't go to festivals. I couldn't do anything. There was no money. And so I decided, well, I'm not going to pay for books. I'll simply write my own. So over the course of 10 years, I wrote it a few pages ahead of where I thought the kids should be. And then over the course of, maybe 3 years, I refined it, and then I used it for, well over 10 years. And it worked really well. One of the only reasons I gave it up was because I always played the piano with the kids when we were doing simple things. But then when they came out with, CDs that had backups for the band, I liked using those too for review and things, So I decided, well, it was time to leave that and move on. But it was very successful.
But it was also fun. So I'm going to put you on the spot, see how your memory is. What were some of the titles of the exercises that you had in those books?
Okay. All right. Well, I had one of the things that I did was I had maybe 7 or 8 versions of Mary Had a Little Lamb, none of which were correct. And the idea was that the kids wouldn't be able to just play in their heads. They would get tricked, So I'd have Mary Had a Lost Lamb, Mary Had a something other lamb. And then I had words. And to get kids to sing, I found that the way to do that was to make funny lyrics, right? So one of them was Mary had a cup of soup, glass of milk, piece of bread. Mary had a glass of wine and a little lamb. And all the kids like, oh, what a horrible thing to say, So I would put these funny little things in there, One of them that I used, I really liked, ended up as a big poster on the wall of the high school at Beaverton High School. And it was a little piece that I wrote, very short little piece that just went, guessing is evil, guessing is bad. As long as you're guessing, the music is bad too. And it was just, and kids, and I would make them sing stuff like this, But once I got them singing something that they were laughing, I could get them singing something else. In fact, I do want to say that one of the absolute proudest moments of my whole entire career happened at the Chehalem Valley Band Festival at George Fox. We couldn't go to the pizza parlor like usual. Somehow it just didn't work out. So I had like 70 some eighth grade band kids eating at the George Fox cafeteria. And there's college people and teachers and adults and everybody in there. And then one of the kids calls out that it's somebody's birthday. And all of them break into singing happy birthday in 3-part harmony. Well, people are just looking around like, what is going on here? And I just thought, my students have so much confidence that they sing in public. And the fact that I forced them, starting in the 6th grade, we did happy birthday right. I would never let them sing it wrong. 7th grade, 2 parts, 8th grade, 3 parts. And here they are singing 3-part harmony, happy birthday in public, in front of everybody. And I tell you, that was just like, that was a moment, as a teacher to feel that I had accomplished that.
Well, and you make it so much fun that they don't realize that they're actually doing your bidding.
No, that's the whole thing, isn't it? You pick fun music, fast, fun, easy music that they want, make them look good, and then when they're not looking, you sneak in education.
Yeah. Especially at middle school where there's so much stuff going on in their lives.
Oh yeah. They're just, well, and then especially at a middle school like in Lake Oswego. I mean, good heavens, it's so easy. And that brings me to the idea of part of the reason I would leave jobs was when they would go to every other day, because I just felt like seeing the kids every day was so essential to the success of the program that if we were just seeing them occasionally, if I could find another job, maybe it was time to leave.
And that's what band directors are really finding out now with this long distance learning, not having that contact, that people are realizing how important that contact is. And there's many times, I'm sure you've done this too, where you say something to someone or you don't know the impact you're having on someone's life.
Right.
You just never know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, when you don't have the interaction, you find out how much you're missing.
Right. That's right. And I'll say I can't even imagine what the poor teachers are going through right now. I have no idea what I would have done, faked it, right? Isn't that what we did? But I want if any of them are listening to this, I know we're thinking about you. Us old retired guys that don't have to deal with it, we're thinking about it. And I'm really sorry that you're in this situation. So, I do have one little story about not knowing what your words mean to a kid. I had an alto saxophone player in whatever grade he was in, who was just one of the biggest screw-offs that you could ever possibly imagine. He's a nice kid, but couldn't play very well, just goofed around, laughed all the time. Sort of reminded me of when I was in middle school, And at one point at Christmas vacation, he went out the door and he said, "Merry Christmas from your best player." And I said, "Merry Christmas, not hardly." So he came back after vacation and he had a brand new saxophone. And after a week or so, I noticed all he was doing was working. He wasn't screwing around. He was really, and I went to him and I said, "What happened to you? You got this new sax and you like this whole new attitude." And he said, "Well, it was what you said when you said not hardly." I decided maybe I did want to be the best one. And I said, all I had to do was insult you. I could have done that a lot earlier had I known that would work, So you just don't know,
Well, you also had a huge influence with people outside of your program because you were a member of the Northwest Band Camp for years and years with Jim Douglas. Now, were you one of the founding members of that camp, or did you come on after going?
No, I was. It was the OSU Band Camp. That's what it had been for years. And OSU had decided they were going to do something with the money that was made from the band camp. And Jim Douglas did not want that. They made just enough money. It was always set up to make just enough money so that you had enough to do it the next year. It was as close to nonprofit as you could get. Well, the head of the music department at OSU was going to use the money for something else. So it was Jim Douglas and Bob Ernst and myself. Don't remember who else maybe. And he wanted to start a private band camp, but he couldn't do it himself. He thought it would look bad since he was still working at OSU. So I said, well, I would take the bull by the horns. So I became the director of the Northwest Band Camp that we formed. And I went out to the coast to the camp where we met. And I told the people that ran that church camp that we had a Northwest Band Camp and we were taking all of the kids with us and leaving. And would he like to rent us the camp rather than rent it to OSU because they wouldn't be there anymore? And so he said, well, they haven't called me for this year, so I can get away with that. So they rented to us. Then I went to the head of the music department at OSU and said, you don't have a program anymore. We just took it. We're the Northwest Band Camp. And so then I ran the camp and we did that for years. And it became more and more successful to the point where we had to go to 2 weeks of camp and, and then, but at some point it was time for me to leave, when I retired and, but I did that for years, ran the camp.
Now that since you retired, you're still being kept really busy with playing and such. You're playing in which groups are you playing in right now?
Well, I still play with my own quintet, and the same one that I played with forever. And then I play in the Lake Oswego Millennium Concert Band. And
it's directed by Dave Becker now.
It is, yeah. Or it will be if we can ever get started up again,
One concert this year?
One concert, yeah. Dale Cleveland had done such an incredible job with that band for so many years. And Dave Becker's going to do the same, but he just hasn't had the opportunity. Barely got started, So we don't know because of this pandemic. When will it start up again? I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, and before I forget, if you are out there watching, and you have some questions, please put them in the comments section so I can ask Dan and we can put him on the spot.
Sure.
So you're writing music. What type of music? I know that you've written music for beginning band and concert bands, and we played one of your pieces. We premiered it when I was doing the beginning band, Lake Oswego. What music are you writing right now?
Well, right now I'm focused on brass quintet music. Getting band pieces published and things like is a challenge. But I found a number of different publishers that would publish my brass quintet arrangements. So I started doing a lot more of that, and I'm published through 3 places right now. A lot of them are at Art of Sound Music. One of them is at Cherry Classics, and then in August, Kendor is going to start publishing some stuff for me. And during the pandemic here, since I've been, well, it really hasn't changed my life too much. The same as usual, but I don't know what's happened. My brain has just been going crazy. So I've been writing a lot of arrangements and original pieces for my brass quintet, which, hopefully we'll get to hear them someday, So I'm doing a lot of that in between going out and working on the hillside and playing with my dogs,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what else you do in your free time. So you've got 2 great dogs.
Yeah, my dogs. I'm trying to grow a garden, trying to defeat the birds, the squirrels, and the slugs, and get a garden to grow. And my wife is the manager of a nonprofit bookstore called Booktique. She was a librarian and a teacher for her career too, but now she does this. In Lake Oswego, the Booktique is a nonprofit bookstore. It works for the library, but she's been home during the pandemic too. So she's been, buying flowers and working around the house. So we've been spending a lot of time, beautifying the place, I guess you'd say. So.
And you have a son, Hans, who is quite a great musician as well.
Yeah, my son, Hans, is a very talented musician. He's playing French horn right now in both the Lake Oswego Millennium Band and in our quintet, even though that's, he's a classical guitarist who doubles on the trumpet and triples on the tuba, and somewhere down in there he can also play the horn, so he does that. And then he teaches privately, and he's been really figuring out how to teach online. So he's doing a lot of private teaching online, and then he's attempting to be a professional photographer, and he does a lot of drone photography for weddings and for real estate and all types of photography. So between those 2 things, he's sort of patching together a career in that.
Well, our time, Dan, is almost up. So I'll ask you just a few more questions. If you had any advice you would give to a young band director right now struggling in this time with the pandemic and such, what would you give that band director? What advice would you give that band director?
Well, I guess I'd always say the same thing to young band directors. After every day, you try to figure out what you did wrong and how you could do it better tomorrow. And if you do that for your whole career, you'll just get better and better. In my career, I tended to leave jobs and go get better ones. And then more than once, the job that I left came back around and became a very good job again. So bad times come, good times come. You just have to ride it out for right now and know that, there'll be better times in the future.
Exactly. I think writing it out is great advice. Well,
Mhm.
Dan, thanks for your time.
All right.
And I really appreciate everything that you've done for me as you were the middle school, junior high band director. Actually, in Lake Oswego, it was, and it's still called a junior high,
Yeah.
even though it's more of a middle school model. But everything you've done has been great. And you've had amazing success with the students that you've touched musically for the last 40 years. So
Yeah.
congratulations on a great career. And I hope that your fishing career is equally as successful.
Of course. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dan.